Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey,
Awesome.
Chika. What's up, Chika?
Nothing much. Well, I guess everything. Lots of things are up. How
Yes,
are you?
I am doing okay too. Excited to speak with you and have these conversations and having a safe space so that we can continue these conversations and these chats. But I'd like to introduce or have yourself introduce yourself to the
Yeah.
friends here who are joining. So,
Cool.
Chika, go ahead.
Sure. So, hey, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Chika. Um, Me and Katrina went to high school together at Walnut. So, hi, all Walnut High School people. So since then, done lots of things. What I do now is public speaking for all things women empowerment,
Mm,
trying to inspire women of color,
mm-hmm.
have self-confidence. And I consider myself a self-love advocate to help people, shed all the misconceptions that society puts on them to help people be their best possible selves.
That is amazing. And the reason why I find it really interesting, I feel it's like very serendipitous because, these conversations that I'm hosting is really to have a safe environment, just like friends talking about these issues of racism, colorism, what it means to be a woman of color
Yep.
and why that's important. And it's, compared to how it was when we were in high school and how we've evolved as adults.
Yeah.
And so thank you for joining. Thank you for taking the time. And I'm just so excited to learn more about how you got involved in, being on TED Talks, Red Table Talks,
Mhm.
which I'm like, wait, is that Chika? I had to like do
Double
a triple take.
rewind, double
Yeah, and I
check.
was like, oh my gosh, look at you. And class president of Walnut High School, which is
Mhm.
like, we're not trying to say like, oh, all presidents go somewhere, but you of our, class president of '07, you definitely made it and are doing great things out there. And I'm just so happy and proud to kind of champion you around and see all the great things that you're doing. So,
Awesome. Well, I was really glad when you reached out to me. I think it's really fun to connect with people who I've known for a long time. So I'm super excited to see you and to have this conversation.
thank you. So let's get into it. Let's start chatting.
Cool, cool.
So, what is kind of your experience and your research with colorism, and how did you get into that? First of all, like what
Yes,
happened? Yeah,
yes,
let's start
great
there.
question.
Yeah.
So I've always been interested in all things race and gender. So when I was at
Um.
college, my major is called social studies. It's a very strange name. I went to a liberal arts college,
Hmm.
but basically it's a mix of all things like econ and sociology and political
Hmm.
theory and all of that. So I kind of focused on sociology and specifically race and
Mm,
gender. That's
I
always in my
see.
focus. I wrote my
Wow.
thesis on Black identity.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, so that's always just been something I was interested in.
Even
Um,
post high school?
yeah. So post high school
Um.
is when I took a lot. I feel like that's when I took my first like African American studies class, and learned
Mm,
like true history that we're typically
yeah.
not taught while in school.
Hmm.
And I loved it. I've always been interested in
That's great.
identity because myself being a child of immigrants, my parents are from Nigeria. I've
Mm,
always thought about what does that mean as being Black in America, but also a Black immigrant. So
yeah.
it's always stuff I've been interested in. And then kind of put that on the back burner for a little bit after college. I went into corporate America. But then when I went
Mm,
to grad school, it's interesting. I went to business school kind of with the thought of like, oh, I want to go into business. But actually, going there put me, going there actually opened up the doors to actually doing more public speaking and advocacy. And
mm.
how that came about is
Stanford, right?
yes,
Stanford
yes,
Business
yes.
Schools.
That's why I went to business
Dang.
school.
Yeah.
And while there, I've always been interested in public speaking. For
Great.
those of you that knew me in Walnut, if you remember, I was in debate club and I did original oratory. So I've always
Hey.
liked, public speaking,
Yeah.
writing speeches and giving speeches and things like that. So
Great.
while in business school, wanted to continue to improve on that. So we had like a public speaking type course. And how that works is, we're able to give a talk on any topic we want. And then the
Hmm.
professor and the kind of like TAs, they're all like TED Talk speakers and like TED coaches and things like that. So
Oh,
they
wow.
they kind of help
Great.
you form your
Yeah.
talk and just
Mm-hmm.
help you gain public speaking skills. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to give a talk on something around race and identity. And so the summer that I was thinking through of what I wanted to talk about, that was the summer of 2015. And that was
Wow.
when the movie Straight Outta Compton came out. And I mentioned this in my
Mm.
TED Talk, but I'll just give a quick summary here. Um, and so I love that movie. I feel like that was like at the very start of what I'll call like a resurgence of
Mm.
more like representational cinema. So that was like
Mm-hmm.
before Black Panther and before Get Out and
Mm-hmm.
before Moonlight. Though, like,
Yeah.
so I remember when I saw Straight Outta Compton, I'm like, yes, it's so amazing to see this movie that is really focused on, you know, Black people, it's majority Black cast, and really celebrating
Mm-hmm.
Black lives. And us
Yeah.
being from Southern California, it's focused on like, you know, a rap group based in
Right.
LA. So I was
Yeah.
super excited, and I just really felt seen and represented by that movie. So it was so disheartening when I saw the casting call, that scandal all
Yeah.
over Facebook showing how they basically rated women based on their skin tone and hair type,
Mm-hmm.
where if you were lighter skin with like long real hair, you were considered like the A girls and like the most beautiful, and you were cast in much more
Mm-hmm.
favorable roles. And the darker your skin tone, the like lesser type of role you were in. And it was just
Yeah.
so disheartening
It
to
is.
see that like even within our own community, we still discriminate against each other.
We
And
do.
so
Mm-hmm.
once I saw that, I'm like, that's what I want to give my talk about in my class. And
Mm.
so I wrote it, and my professor was like, oh, I'd love for you to present this at the upcoming TED conference.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
then I
Yeah.
presented it there, and then that's kind of how this all took off.
That is just so amazing that you were able to find, something that you were so interested in. And
Mm-hmm.
even me in film, as a person of color, a woman of color,
Yep.
I think it's very, now you see all these Twitter and all these people, like, cancel culture is
Yep.
really putting people in check and saying, hey, you can't just blindly be, writing these, first of all, who's the casting director? And I just had this conversation with my other friend too.
Yeah.
Who's the casting director? Who's writing these castings? Who's looking for these castings?
Yep.
And what are the issues that surround, like, how do you find the right people to fit these categories without being so, I mean, this is 2015, but we're still fighting the same things,
Yep.
having representation. And going back to colorism, I just saw that, like, I remember you were talking, I think it was either on Red Table Talks or TED Talks, about how in high school you felt that, like, even within your circle, like the whole colorism issue and racism,
Mm-hmm.
and how that affected your self-esteem. And that broke my heart, because the reason why I am in film right now is
Yeah.
because in high school, in sophomore year,
Yeah.
I told myself that I could never be in film because I
Wow.
was Asian. And to think that and I'm like, wow, Chika, like, I am not your stereotypical smart Asian that's why I'm in film, because I'm a hard creative. Like, I'm
Uh-huh.
definitely like left and right brain, like, creative,
Yeah.
and I mean, when you said that, I'm just like, wow. So as kids in high school, we both went through the same, like, insecurities and
Mm-hmm.
self-confidence issues. And you talked about it in Red Table Talks too, about how, like, little kids have these things, and to be able to, like, share it in a way where we're like, we come together and we're adults now, and we're like, these are issues that we have to change. And,
Yeah.
yeah, is really something that's eye-opening. So, with your whole colorism, was it like a topic? Is this like a research, or is this kind of something
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I learned about it formally while in college, because I took a
Mm-hmm.
lot of race and identity and gender type
Mm-hmm.
courses. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like my experience with colorism is I always felt it, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that there was a name for it. I didn't know the history behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I just saw it around me, that preference for people
Yeah.
with lighter skin, but
Yeah.
never really knew what it was about. So it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
until I took different African American studies type classes where I learned, like, oh, there's history behind it. Like, this is where it stems from. And so that's how I got like more formally introduced to it. And then when I was preparing my talk for what then became my TED Talk, I did more research.
That's great. That's great that, you know, and I wanted to know, like, within your research and knowledge for colorism, right? So it's the same actually, and I'm speaking from my own Asian American experience, you know, that Asians in Asia and even now, there is colorism within our community too, and how
the
we
lightening
rate,
cream,
yes, the
brightening cream, lightening cream,
yeah, and you know, so it's true in the sense where even from different cultures, it is a status thing. From Asia, you know, there definitely is that idea, and I was raised in it too. And even like the creams that I use, it's like, oh, brightening creams, you know, and I fall guilty of that too, you know, like, but I also, like, just like you, I think you mentioned, like, you know, born and raised in SoCal, like I like hiking, and it's true that there is this affinity and this status and this elitist mentality in the Asian culture where, and I think that's hard to change. Like, if we're trying to talk about change in like, you know, America, in Asia, in a different, like for you, like, how do you apply that to something like in Nigeria, where it's like, it's part of their culture, where it's like, how do you, right? Like, if beauty standards are already set in a way where, you know, it is lighter skin, and it is how, you know, comparison, the reason why they favor the lighter skin is it is because, like, if you're darker, you're seen as someone who is less than. If you're working in the villages, because in Asia, it's true, like, you know, if you're, that's why you see all these different types of like older Asians, you know, these big robo hats covering up as much
I remember
skin
growing
as
up,
they
I always
can.
see that. And then
You know,
as I got older, I learned the history of why that's happening and what are the beliefs that lead to those actions. No, and it's you talked about in Asia, and you asked me about in Nigeria. You know, the truth of the matter is, this is worldwide. It truly is a worldwide phenomenon. I was having a conversation like this yesterday. I was talking to a historian. I was on a panel with a historian, and she really studies also like race and gender and things like that around the world. And you know, she had this fact that in around the 1900s, you know, what we now consider, you know, the UK or British, in the 1900s, they had colonialized or had a presence in over 90% of the globe. And so you have this, you know, white Western, you know, power really influencing all peoples of the globe. And it was just really clear that proximity to whiteness led to status, more resources, and a better life. And so you know, that's the foundation of it. And so you see the history of that to this day. In many cultures, there's a very strong preference for lighter skin, fairer skin. And it's because there's a history of access and better resources being equated with proximity to whiteness.
Yeah, and you mentioned that too, kind of the history of where that started in the Black community, right? And I find that it, fast forward to 2020, where, I mean, at least we're making noise about it, right?
Yeah, at least we're talking about it.
We're talking about it. So when you kind of found your research in terms of like Straight Outta Compton and kind of the casting calls and how that was deprecating, did you, you know, have you seen or personally seen any changes then compared to now? And, you know, like, this is more, have you thought of things that maybe, what can we do, right, as the next generation, and like being part of this, not just making noise, but how can we be more, do more active things to change this? Because right, it is a mindset, and I had to really, it's a lot of mental undoing too, to see and to realize and to accept
what is really happening. I think the first step is awareness and acknowledgement, right? So like knowing this exists, knowing these prejudices exist, and these preconceived notions, because that's the thing with something like colorism, and even, you know, a lot of discrimination and biases. A lot of these are just notions in our subconscious that we never even question. Like you might just in your mind, you know, we see this in the Black community, you know, you hear people say, oh, that person is light skinned or what have you, and just this, you know, just this automatic thought of like, oh, well, this person's prettier. And you don't even double think about, well, why was that my initial thought? So just having that awareness is step one, because once you have that awareness, then you can start to unlearn it. You know, you can start to really break it down. So one is the awareness. Two, I think a lot of it is also just doing the internal work. So it's like there's two parallel paths. There's the external work, which is, you know, pushing companies, pushing media. Media plays a huge role in representation. So, you know, pushing media, pushing companies, making sure you have products that satisfy everyone's needs, making sure that the lead role isn't just a lighter skinned Black person, isn't just a fair skinned Asian person, isn't just a fair skinned Southeast Asian person, you know, like making sure that you see that representation and really pushing for that. And then also the internal work. You know, oftentimes people fall victim to internalized racism. And that's what you see when you see the videos of really young girls saying that, oh, you know, being lighter skin is prettier, or there's this doll test where you ask a young African American girl to point to the smart one and just automatically pointing to the white doll. So how do we at an early age start to you know, how do we stop the negative images from even coming in, you know, and how do we build up this self-love and self-confidence so that regardless of what's going on externally, you know, we know that we're enough. We know that we're smart enough, we're good enough, we're beautiful enough, and we don't need that external validation. So it's like two paths of work, the external and the internal.
That is true. And I definitely think it's very important to, if we can't, you know, change ourselves, right? It starts with, like you said, awareness. We have to, you know, ingrain it in our children to, you know, if we're having kids or our friends, you know, our community, and change that mindset. And I think it's so empowering to see, you know, people like you and whoever, like even myself, trying to push for this and help people see this in a very welcoming, safe space way, so that, you know, we can be aware, like woke and aware. And you know, that's funny you say like it's ingrained in us from history, and it is in our fashion, in our culture, in our. I was in pageantry, and that in itself, yes, it's a confidence builder, but I think it also depends of like, I remember I did a lot of pageants, but I did one for California USA, or the one that's previously owned by Trump, which is horrible. But
because that's Miss USA,
Miss USA, So I remember even then, kind of like seeing myself as an Asian and seeing like what their beauty standards were, and it's interesting to see why there has to be a certain you know, historically, that's why there's Miss Chinatown, which I competed in. You know, there's Miss, you know, all these different cultures, because of why we had to separate ourselves and realize from our own communities that, you know, we had to make our own pageants because the mainstream media doesn't see us, or and I remember like going to the pageant.
I can only imagine what that experience was like.
Oh yeah, like even this was 2015 too. So while you were doing colorism, I was going up to the judges and saying, hey, you know, I hope you guys know that you can find more representation. And, you know, beauty is not, you know, I told myself I couldn't do something like this because I was Asian, and California in itself is such a mixing pot of cultures and people and diversity, that I hope that you can find that there's so much more representation that's needed. I don't know what happened after that, but you know, there still isn't. I haven't seen a lot more movement in diversity and inclusion in the fashion world. But you know,
well, that's so amazing. I'm so inspired to hear that you did that, because it's true. You know, you don't see a diverse set in these pageants. You know, they all kind of look the same. So I
Yeah.
definitely applaud you for joining and for letting them know, like, hey, like this isn't acceptable. And like you said, California
Mm-hmm.
is a diverse state. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
unacceptable for that not to be represented in these pageants. And it's pageants like these that display to the world what is viewed as
Yes,
beautiful. So I'm
that's
glad you're there
true.
and you
So
made your voice known.
thank you. But do you think this is kind of like a system that we have to fight and, find ways? Do you think that, like, that there is, if this is a way to kind of that mentality? I'm just being honest and I want to hear your straight
Yeah, yeah,
answer. Like,
yeah.
if
Yeah.
there is systematic, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think change can definitely be done. And it's you see bits of it. Like I'm encouraged by the changes I'm seeing, in the media. I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing much more diverse movies, much more different types of lead characters. And so I feel like
Mm-hmm.
there needs to be people doing that work. There needs to be people that keep banging those doors and like, banging the table at
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
pageants and at the in the media and companies to make sure there's representation. So that work needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I think we can't wait for kind of the big society to change
Yeah.
for us to
Mm.
to reclaim our voice and our value, right? Because like
Mm.
we hope things get better for our future hypothetical kids. Like we
Yeah.
hope our future
Yeah.
hypothetical daughters don't grow up with the same insecurities we did, but we can't wait for society to change. So I think another big part is just realizing, how do we empower ourselves, and
Mm-hmm.
like what can we do internally to like create a force field against what's going on externally. And so, and even me doing soul searching, I found that
Mm-hmm.
my I get more energized in helping people reclaim their own voices and find their own self-confidence, more so than like banging on the doors of, people in media and people in Hollywood. So I think it's just in terms of like, where do you get your energy from, and like what's more, what's your preference of how you want to move this
Mm-hmm.
mission forward.
So that leads me to my next question. So, you have all of these great titles, and why did you choose Women of Color Champion
Yes.
and Self-Love Advocate?
Yes, because I truly feel like my mission is to just help inspire all women of color.
Mm.
And I feel like I remember when I first gave my TED talk, just how many people related to me, like not just Black
Mm.
people, like so many Asian people, Southeast Asian people, Hispanic people are like, oh my gosh, I feel this way too. Like I've experienced that
Yeah.
too. And so just
Mm-hmm.
seeing how much these types of topics really transcend
Mm-hmm.
all women of color. And so definitely wanted to, state that and be explicit about, hey, that's who I'm really trying to help and empower. And then
Mm-hmm.
self-love advocate, because I truly think that is the key. So really
Mm-hmm.
being able to unlearn all of these negative images and negative stereotypes we've been told. And at the end of the day, like that love and confidence needs to come from within. I think we're so
Mm-hmm.
used to getting it from the outside and needing that validation. And then,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not what society deems as, worthy or what have
Right.
you, it can lead to a lot
Mm-hmm.
of negative outcome, low self-worth, a bad self-image, and that can really prevent you from living in your fullest expression of yourself. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I really learned that the key to everything is really having that self-love. And so wanting to try to spread that message and help all women of color find that.
That's awesome. So are you a mentor? Is that what you've been up to these days?
Yes, so public speaking on different
Mm-hmm.
panels, and just finding different ways to engage with those that want to see how they can improve themselves.
Mm, awesome. So, I actually want to also talk about your experience while you were on TED Talks, if
Hmm.
that's Okay, so,
Yep, yep, yep.
when you were on TED Talks, how was that being up on there, and what was your feedback, and what was everything kind of going through that journey?
Yeah, no, it was quite the journey because
Mm-hmm.
just writing the talk was an
Mm-hmm.
experience in and of itself. I realized
Mm-hmm.
that was the start of a personal journey for me personally. So this is the first
Mm-hmm.
time I've even talked at that time. That was the first time I had talked publicly about some of my different insecurities and things like that. And to talk about
Mm-hmm.
colorism, that's something that was like so personal and like so like
Yeah.
close to the chest. And like I
Yeah.
mentioned, I had never set out to do a TED Talk. It was supposed to be a talk
Mm-hmm.
that I shared with my class. And so I remember when I was in grad
Yeah.
school, I've always been a really private person. So one of my goals was to be able to share more and to be more vulnerable and to,
Mm-hmm.
help people see the real me and be more authentic. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
pretty
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable in that talk because I thought the audience was just going to be my classmates. It's not a large class. There's only have like 300 classmates. So then when I was asked to do it on TED Talk, I'm like, oh wow, I guess I'm going to
Yeah.
share with the world. And then I got all those views. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, now everybody knows. So
Yeah.
um, I think if I had known that's how it was gonna end up, I don't think I probably would have been as vulnerable and personal. So it's probably
Really?
yeah, because I'm a
I
private
think that's
person.
great.
So I'm
Yeah,
kind of
I
like
know. It's
pushed
hard.
into doing that. Um,
Mm.
but that was, I think that ended up being really great because what it did for me is, as
Mm-hmm.
I gave that talk and, getting that feedback and chatting with people about these topics and about all the different things they struggled with not feeling good enough or things like that, it made me
Mm-hmm.
be more reflective on myself and
Mm.
realize like, okay, I'm talking about this, but I still have a lot of work to do and I am still on my own personal journey. And so since then I did
We
this other
all are.
talk.
Mm-hmm.
We all are. I did this other talk where I cut my
Mm-hmm.
hair, and that was a whole big thing because for Black women, hair is a really big deal. There's
Mm.
this uh, similar to colorism, like there's this
Mm.
belief that long, straight, real hair is better and is more desirable. And as you can see, I have kinky curly hair, which I used to hate. I used
Yeah.
to hate, oh my gosh, I wanted
Mm.
nothing more than to have long straight hair. And
Oh,
so, yeah. And so I've given that TED
yeah.
talk and made me more reflective and made me realize like as I'm on this journey of self-love, I need to learn to love all of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I cut my
Mm-hmm.
hair and went natural and it's
Yes.
just been such a beautiful experience for me to really
Mm-hmm.
try to live out what I'm talking about.
That's great that you talk about the hair and colorism, and because even I remember in high school, this is personal to me too. Like I remember it was a big thing for like the Asian girls to have like straight, like
Mm.
what was it called? The Asian straight perms.
I
Like we
was
would
that
that
girl
was
who was
not
naturally
like,
straight.
and it wasn't just me. Like all the high school friends. Oh no, we spent like, like, oh, this is the latest. I forgot the name. We were like, oh, I went to Japan or like China or Hong Kong to that
Yeah.
Japanese perm. To get the Japanese perm, they spent $300-400. And I
Wow.
I don't I actually have like natural waves in my hair. And
Oh, I
I
see. I
I
see.
was, yeah, it's a little bit, but I know, but I'm saying this from and all the Asians, the classmates that are hopping on right now, they know, like, the straight hair that covers kind of,
Yeah,
the better, like, and people,
yeah.
yeah, it was expensive. Like, people were commenting, but it was like $300-400. And it's true. So that's why I'm saying, like, it's so interesting how all of us, like,
Mhm.
the classmates are talking about, that are hopping on right now and talking about,
Yeah,
like, yeah, we went through the same thing, but just in our own communities,
yeah.
is finding these ways that we are still connected in how we see ourselves, the
Yes.
beauty standards, the hair. Yeah, I was saying like we were going through the same thing where we as Asians, when we were
Mhm.
young, this is like middle school, we'd
Yeah.
straighten our hair and stuff. And but I think now people are talking about it, and even like you, and making waves and being an advocate, and being representative of it. I don't know if you've heard, but like recently there's been like a cancel, like almost like a wild witch hunt. Tina Fey's been gaslit because the way that she portrayed Asians in Mean Girls was very derogatory.
The
The
way she
Asian,
portrayed everybody.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think honestly, because of the Black Lives Matter movement, which I wanted to talk about, that's the next thing too, is the movement is so big. That's why I wanted to keep the conversation going, and that I wanted to be able to see, like, and I'm seeing it too, like how is this affecting different industries, the film
Yep.
industry, politicians, everyone's being on check with, oh, we support, all types, we support the Black Lives Matter movement, and all these companies coming out, but people are also getting gaslit, and like Mark Wahlberg was also trending on Twitter because he had some really horrible racism acts where he attacked Asians and Black young kids
Yeah.
when yeah, so
Yeah. He has a racist past.
the racist past. So, what is kind of your take on the Black Lives Matter movement, and how's that been for you?
Yeah, no, it's been it's it's great that it's getting so much more visibility. And
Mm-hmm.
what's different this time is
Mm-hmm.
that we're seeing non-Black people really speak out in a way that we haven't seen before. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like when all this first started happening, I almost felt like I was in the twilight because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, me and my circles in our communities, I mean, we talk about Black Lives Matter all the time, and we've
Yeah.
constantly been seeing, what's going on. And this isn't the first instance of police brutality. And so it's just so interesting that this time to be seeing that support from outside
Mm-hmm.
the Black community was just so new. And I feel like at first I almost didn't know how to take it.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's a part of me that gets a bit skeptical of, our to what extent is all this performative, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
something that
Right.
us that have kind of been in the movement all along, it's like, all right, are people just posting because they have to? Are they just posting
Mm-hmm.
because that's like the thing to do now? I went to
Mm-hmm.
the big protest in Hollywood because I wasn't too far
Oh,
from where I live. I live
wow.
in Hollywood,
Yeah.
and I saw like influencers, and their little influencer outfits with their Black Lives Matter sign, and the friends are taking pictures
Yeah,
of
how was
them,
that?
and so just, you wonder, okay, are people doing it for the right reasons? But I'm really encouraged, when people like you reach out to me and it's like, hey, I really want to keep the conversation going, and I see how Black Lives Matter isn't just a Black community issue. Black Lives
Mm-hmm.
Matter, like they say, when Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. And being able to see how, when you do help Black lives, you're going to help everyone, because it's
Mm-hmm.
really showing that, as of right now, all lives
Yes.
are not treated equally.
Yep.
And so the fact that more groups are seeing that, and the fact that more groups are really understanding the true meaning of Black Lives Matter,
Mm-hmm.
is really encouraging. So, whereas at first I was skeptical, I was like, how much of this is performative? Do people
Mm-hmm.
really care? Do companies really care? Now it's encouraging now to see those that are still continuing those conversations, and to see those that are still continuing this work. So I'm very appreciative of you for reaching out and having these
Oh, no.
conversations and for keeping this top of mind. So I'm encouraged.
No, thank you, because I think that was something that's why I started this, was really having, like I said, even our little Walnut High School buzz, it's how our ways, small ways, that what can we do in small ways in our own communities, in our own little ways, to be part of this movement and to be able to keep it going, because it is true. It's real. I had to really humble myself and realize that too. When the whole Asian attacks for COVID and racist attacks towards Asians started happening, I was really humbled by these activists and advocates who were like, but the Black community, our community, has been struggling since, you know, 400 years ago. And I think this is a learning process for me too. And knowing that, like, you know, we really do have to accept that whole thing that you said, where it's like we have to accept and be aware of these issues, whether it's colorism or racism. And we can never get rid of hate or racism, but at least be able to be aware and to be able to have these conversations and to normalize and to be able to make room, right, for other people to feel like they're in the conversation, included in every industry. So definitely thank you too. But I also wanted to know, lastly, you know, for yourself, like, we're reaching adulthood. We're like 30 right now. Not to age ourselves, I know. So, like, what is kind of like, where do you ideally see kind of all of this taking place, going down, like, as we become the next XYZ, right? We're the next executives. If we, you know, we're the next people who will, you know, I think part of it is some of these people who are in these chairs, wherever they may be, it is fear too, right? And so I think it's where, you know, where do you see yourself and your hopes in kind of like championing all of this colorism, women of color and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to think how long it's been since we were all, you know,
it's so sad,
at Walnut.
right? Yeah.
But you know, I would say I'm encouraged. I am encouraged because, you know, it's conversations like this. So to see that people are open to, you know, having the hard conversations, and having the hard conversations with different types of people. Because like you said, you know, we will soon be the people in these seats. Some of us already are the people in these seats. And so, you know, I'm definitely encouraged that, you know, we are going to usher in, you know, an era of more cross conversations, you know, an era of more activism, an era of more, you know, speaking out. And I love this, you know, that you're doing here, because it starts in your local community. You know, like for us, you can't get any more local than Walnut. It starts in your small communities where you grew up, where your beliefs are formed. And so the fact that we're able to do something like this and to keep the conversation going, you know, I'm really encouraged that, you know, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we'll be able to, you know, move things forward even further. And then, of course, the future generation, we hope that, you know, the hope is that the future generation isn't having this conversation because they don't need to. You know, the hope is the future generation, you know, they can already see a society where we don't have these preconceived notions. And so, you know, I'm hopeful that we are going to pass this on, and this kind of progressive mindset and, you know, inclusive mindset on to the next generation.
Absolutely. And I think it really does take, you know, like a village, our Walnut Village, and beyond, to really keep doing so. And I think it's really helpful and really inspiring to see people like you do what you're doing. And they're very difficult conversations. And I speak for myself, coming from very strict upbringing culturally. And if you can imagine,
Nigerian parents, likewise.
Well, how was that kind of growing up, like with strict Nigerian parents? Were they strict on you too?
Extremely. Yeah.
And that's why, like, if you can imagine, like, our immigrant parents, right? It's so interesting to say, but like, and we're second generation, right? Here, American born. So like, if we can do this in America, which, you know, there's so much injustices and we can fight for it. Can you imagine, like, how can we start and catapult this in other countries like Asia, who are still going to do so, right? And you know, like, how can we be able to continue this so that they'll be able to see this as a trend and a movement too.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a great question and a great thought. And I think
Hmm.
this is where, forces like digital media really play in our favor, because with something like
Hmm.
this can be, even this conversation we're having can be viewed worldwide, as we
Hmm.
post to our socials and
Hmm.
as we can get the word out. And, this is where, a lot of countries follow American culture,
Yeah.
and a lot of countries, look at what America is doing. And, I think a lot of us were floored when we saw the George Floyd protests worldwide. So this
Mm-hmm.
really shows the
Yeah.
power of, when
Yeah.
movements happen in the US, it has the ability to really cascade. And so I
Hmm.
think we are in a great position to be able to, champion
Hmm.
inclusivity and to be able to champion these types of
Hmm.
conversations. And so,
Yeah.
I think digital media plays in our favor here, and our ability to, elevate voices that maybe aren't heard in traditional media.
Yes. And I think it's really important to kind of encourage even our friends here that are hopping on and people who are joining that we can all play a part in speaking up too, wherever we're at, whether it's socially, outdoors, in public, whatever we see that is not right,
Mhm.
or our friends in our community, our workspaces, I, I, I really hope that we can take what we're having here and like thought-provoking conversations and kind of encouraging you guys who are viewing to be able to go out there and saying, hey, like, how can I do this in my accounting firm, or how can I do this in my engineering firm, where we can have more tables, more people talking in these conversations and making more room for equal rights and people of color and women of color, right? Because there's this whole thing of feminism too in the workspace.
Yep.
I think um, that I think if we keep quiet and we don't have these conversations, and then we need to be able to push that, and so wait, last one, because I've totally forgot, was Red Table Talks.
Hmm.
How was your experience with Red Table Talks and being on that panel with Jada Pinkett Smith and three generations of very
Yeah.
impactful and inspiring women?
Yeah, no, that was absolutely amazing. That was great. I think colorism was something that they had been wanting to talk about. And so
Hmm.
one of their producers had found me. I think he had seen my talk and he guessed my work
Nice.
email.
Oh, cool.
And so I chatted with them and they wanted to bring me on, and it was such an amazing experience and if, anyone has watched their table talk, Katrina, you
Yeah.
said you're a fan, and
Yeah.
I was a fan before they asked me to join. And what I've loved is that they truly have open, honest, authentic
Yeah.
conversations. Like they really
Yeah.
want to talk about, the tough topics
Yes.
that's typically
Yeah.
hard to talk about. And they bring
Yeah.
that perspective of from young, Willa, I think she's
Yes.
like 17 or 18,
Yeah.
to Gami, Jada's mom. And so to
Hmm.
see all the different generations and all those perspectives, and I think they have really important and impactful conversations. So it was
Hmm.
so special to have that conversation there with that group,
I saw
to
it
just
was
talk
so,
openly
yeah.
about what's going on, and
Yeah.
how that has affected all of us, and how we feel and what our hopes are for the future.
I think that's amazing to see, and I am so encouraged, and that's why I'm also doing stuff like this so that we can keep that going in our own
Yep.
communities. And but I'd like to now, thank you, Chika, open this up to anyone who has any questions at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone, all these friends hopping on. I saw so many people who hopped off and
I
on.
know. It was like a
And
little
so,
mini reunion.
yeah. So does anyone have any questions for Chika? Um, or Chika, do you have any questions or anything else? I also wanted to open it up to any resources that people may want to ask you, if you're a self-love advocate. And
Mhm.
I think that's important too, because I am a big supporter for mental health and finding support. because it does, I think media and the way that we see ourselves does have a role. Like I grew up thinking blonde hair, blue eyed had, was beautiful too. So
We
are
all
there
did.
any, and yeah, how are there any resources that you would like to share, or any orgs or anything that you would like to talk about and share to our friends here who are
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. No, I'm so glad we're able to come and have this conversation. Gosh, if anything, there's so many resources. I
mm,
think something that was different from this movement is, I feel like in the past, people typically go to the, out oppressed group, if I can't think of a better word,
hmm
to educate them. But I feel like now I'm seeing a lot of people taking agency and ownership to educate themselves.
yes.
And so there are, so many great books out there. I think Netflix has actually done an amazing job of curating
hmm
a lot of great documentaries.
hmm
13th is a great one, Ava
13.
DuVernay, to
Yes.
kind of talk more about the history,
hmm
mass incarceration in the US and how we got here.
hmm
There's a more, almost like off the beaten path documentary from Chelsea Handler. She has this
Oh, really?
documentary in Netflix, and I believe it's called White Privilege.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
or yes, and she's a comedian, and
Mm.
so she kind of talks about privilege and race, and from a point of view that I think is much more accessible to non people of color,
Mm.
because it's coming from someone that they're familiar with. So I thought that is could be something
Mm.
helpful for people to watch. Oh, it's Young Bunny put in Dear White People. That is
Yeah.
great. It's so funny.
Yes.
I
Oh,
watched the
I haven't watched it yet.
movie. I
Mm.
watched it because it started as a movie and now it's a season, or now it's a series, and I felt like that was my college experience come to life. So
Oh,
Dear White
really?
People, yeah, Dear White People is definitely a good
Right,
one
because
to
you went
watch.
to Stanford.
I went to Stanford
That's
for grad school. I went
a
to Harvard
grad
for
school.
undergrad.
Oh, wow. But even when I went to USC, I had felt
Mhm.
similar. I never applied to the Greek life, but there were definitely, hush hush standards for different Greeks that only allowed
Mhm.
blonde hair, blue eyed girls with money,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah, but
and
I hear USC has a big problem with that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but that's really interesting. Yeah. Um, all right. But anything else you'd like to add? Because I know I.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, would love for, those that don't already, please follow me. Gonna
Mm-hmm.
be starting a, blog and newsletter where I can be having much more of these conversations. So,
Nice.
subscribe to my mailing list. We'll be having, more of these intimate type conversations where we can be, honest and really share how we feel. So looking forward
Awesome.
to getting that off the ground.
And where can we
Um,
find that? What is your, do you have like a link, or is this your email,
yes.
or where can we find, you're
So
gonna
yeah, if you
post
just
it?
go to yeah, so I will send the links. Just on my Instagram at Chika Okoro 825. You can also go to my website. I am chikaokoro.com. So I am Chika,
Mm-hmm.
Chika, Okoro, Okoro.com.
Nice. Very, very excited. I'm excited to like, link and be a part of that too, because we can only grow from each other. And
Yes.
um, thank you so much again, Shika. If you guys have any questions or anything else, please mention it now. Otherwise, we will let Shika go. If
I
you guys,
enjoyed this so much. It was so fun talking to you, Katrina.
yes,
And let's do this again. Let's do this again. I'm looking forward to us working
I'm
together. It
so
sounds like
glad.
we're like on the
Yes,
same page. So
we are. And that is why I reached out to you, because I was like, wait, colorism, casting directors and issues, and how degrading and depressing it is. Yes, we have, it's really
let's
sad.
talk.
Let's talk. But we will have a round two, and I will work on the technical issues. But those of you who just hopped on, we are closing right now, but I will edit and post the full video on YouTube and social media. And so thank you guys for being patient, friends. And thank you, especially Chika, for joining and being, I'm so happy and proud of
Thank you
you
for having
too.
me.
And Yeah, thank you for joining us. So, thank you. I'll definitely keep you up to date to that second round. Yeah, everybody follow Chika. I'm gonna post all her information too. And thank you guys for being with us. So, all right, bye. Thank you,
Bye,
Chika. You guys
everybody.
stay safe, stay well, wear your mask,
Yes.
and
Stay
social
safe.
distance. All right,
Yes.
bye. Good night.
Bye.